A former Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cape Coast, Professor Kuupole, has described the African continent as one which has lost its cultural and sense of identity. Speaking at the launch of a newly published book titled Realigning and Repositioning Africa, Charting Its Own Course in the 21st Century, Professor Kuupole said the African continent has over the years suffered and is still experiencing economic, cultural, physical and mental enslavement from the West, which has led to the loss of the true African identity. The book, as edited by an associate professor in the Department of English at UCC, Professor Musa Traore, and a scholar in African and International Studies, Dr. Tony Talbot, is a collection of research articles that examine Africa's position in the geopolitics of the 21st century. The former Pro-Vice-Chancellor of UCC indicated that the infiltration of Western cultures into the African culture is having a rampaging effect on Africans, which calls for urgent attention.
It traces our cultural, economic, and philosophical background, how we started as Africans, and where we are now in a kind of, we are kind of in the blues. We don't know whether we are really and truly Western or we are still African, because there's a cultural mix, and some of us are beginning to lose the basics of our Africanness. So reading this book as students, as lecturers, as academics, as scholars is very helpful in the sense that it rekindles our mindset vis-a-vis who we are, vis-a-vis what we have, vis-a-vis where we were and where we are now, and then where we intend to be, our African perspectives. Do we continue in that confused state as where we are now, or do we adopt, or rather do we adapt some of the cultures that are useful for our philosophy, for our system, for our being as a continent, or do we reject everything entirely? No, I don't think we need to reject. We need to blend, and so that we can also go at par with the global system. Yes, it's good for scholars, it's good for university students to open and broaden their mind in the African cultural and philosophical setup.
One of the editors of the book, Dr. Tony Talbot, noted that the book has been published to help erode the negative attitude and perceptions that African cultures and people have faced for years.
The main reason for this publication is to challenge the Western assumption that everything from the West is best. So we don't really need to study anything that is about Africa per se, because that's not really important. And so what we try to do in this book is suggest that actually it's the other way around. Africa is important. We do need to incorporate the significance of Africa into what we're doing today, both politically, historically, sociologically. It's important to combine bits of Africa and bits of the West, rather than saying we will just embrace totally the West and ignore Africa completely. And that's what the various essays in this book try to discuss. What we want to say is that when we discuss Africa, why should it only be a list of problems, a list of challenges? Is there nothing good at all that is happening on the continent? The whole continent is just negative? That's what we want to challenge.
On his part, Professor Musa Traore hinted that the book would be helpful to students, scholars, and Africa in general, as it discusses most worrying issues confronting the African continent.
Issues that we discuss in this book are issues that are related to Africa and to the world in general. We talk about geopolitics, is that okay? We talk about Africa, we talk about the Caribbean, we talk about Black America, and we talk about Europe, is that okay? So we talk about race, racial issues, is that okay? Issues of race. When we talk about, I would say, issues of identity, we have a chapter, on women and their hair. That was conducted, it was based on, I would say, a survey or an interview I would say, done here in Ghana. Is that okay? Women and the hair. Then we have another interesting chapter on gastro diplomacy. Is that okay? How Ghanaian food can be valorized. Is that okay? And sort of increase and elevate the value of Ghana. Because many countries are doing that. You hear about what Thai cuisine, you understand me? Chinese cuisine, Brazilian cuisine, and all those things. How about Ghanaian cuisine? To be so interesting. Is that okay? Gastronomy. We talk about security also. We have terrorist attacks in so many countries around, I would say Ghana here. In Burkina Faso, where I come from, there are so many terrorist attacks. Is that okay? Now, there's one issue that we try to address. We do address, actually. We ask ourselves, is Ghana prepared enough for to defend herself in case of a terrorist attack? So these are some other issues. Of course, education also. We are in a teaching and learning institution, so we sort of think about the crisis in which the education system is. What is the crisis? What is the solution? How can our students be better persons on the job market? And how can they feel inside that peace, not torn in terms of identity? I would like to see clubs put in place. We have a Creative Writers Club. I'm one of the patrons. I would like this book to be discussed in that club, the Club of Creative Writers. We'll break it down. We're going to look at the different chapters, ways of writings, themes, topics, issues of development, imperialism. We have another club also, the Pan-Africanist students. I'm one of the patrons. I want this book to be discussed there in that club. Is that okay? This book is sort of centered around the issue of Pan-Africanism. So in other words, the book can be useful in so many clubs. Then it will be available at so many places. We'll place it in some, I would say, the bookshops of the main universities here, Legon, Kumasi, and we'll place it also at Cape Coast Castle. Is that okay? Yeah, you can get good copies there, okay? We'll see if Elmina Castle will be, but definitely we'll put some copies at Cape Coast Castle.
My name is Nora Derby, reporting for TV UCC.